Hey, family. I want to take some time and talk about Black history and white guilt. But before I do, let's take some time to watch this.
Many of the free Negroes stayed in the South. Do you know in the 1860 census, there were 440,000 about free Negroes? I mentioned that earlier. More than half lived in the states that were the Confederacy and the border states where slavery was free. And they stayed there, ladies and gentlemen, unmolested, including my family in eastern West Virginia. They stayed there because that's where they had their family and that's where they had their property. Remember, their property was, they had to be given property in Virginia and many of these other southern states. What are they going to do? Go to New York? Live in Harlem? Hang out and listen to jazz with Dizzy, Charlie Parker? They stayed where they were raised. And many of them, this is the worst, the dirtiest secret in African American history, is that a surprisingly high percentage of the free Negroes in the South owned slaves themselves. And some of them owned, we explain it away by saying, oh, but they only own their mother, or they only own, yeah, they own their mother, they own their sister, they own their wife, and they own some other workers too. A surprisingly high number owned workers who they did not liberate throughout the South. There were enough black free Negroes who supported the Confederacy that they voluntarily formed a regiment in the state of North Carolina to fight for the Confederacy. And black Confederate troops are featured on the cover of Harper's Weekly in 1863. Frederick Douglass used this as an argument to make Lincoln allow black men to fight.
Wow.
Because remember, Lincoln didn't want to do it. Lincoln made a famous statement in 1862. He said, I suppose we could arm them, but if we did, their arms would end up in the hands of the Confederates within a week, because he thought that they were incompetent, not smart enough to win. And eventually, as I said, the North was losing the war. Frederick Douglass was agitating, and this book by Casemore persuaded him to change his mind, and incrementally. So again, it's not only the myth makers who created the idealized Lincoln.
The unique position of the Western world in the history, and especially the destruction of slavery, need not imply that there was unanimity within the West on this institution. In addition to whites who defended the enslavement of Africans on racial grounds, or who opposed general emancipation on social grounds, there were many whites, and even blacks, who defended slavery as a matter of self-interest as slave owners. Although most black owners of slaves in the United States were only nominal owners of members of their own families, there were thousands of other blacks in the antebellum South who were commercial slave owners, just like their white counterparts. An estimated 1/3 of the free persons of color in New Orleans were slave owners, and thousands of these slave owners volunteered to fight for the Confederacy during the Civil War. Black slave owners were even more common in the Caribbean. In short, there were many defenders of slavery in the West.
I love this video because it talks about Black history, but it talks about it in reality. Yes, slavery was a horrible institution, but white people were not the only people to participate in slave owning. Many people participated in slave owning. I wish they would have gotten into the indigenous people who also owned slaves and how the Trail of Tears had slaves on it. Black people also owned slaves. This is history. This is our American history. This is a history in the Caribbean. This is our history. But what happens oftentimes, and especially in the church, is that white people are made to feel guilty about their ancestral participation, whether they have participated or not. Normally, they're just guilty by skin color of slavery. And so we go all the way back to history to say, yes, but slavery. You guys, this is part of history. History includes Black slave owners. And if we cannot acknowledge that in conversations of reparations or conversations of guilt, we are playing by rules of partiality, and it's not even. We cannot just demand white guilt and white reparations when white people are not the only people to participate in slavery. And if you are white and have continually felt guilty, please stop. Oh, the poor Black people. I mean, they had slavery. Stop. It placates a whole people, and it's not based on the reality of our history. Our history is complicated. Our history is rooted in sin, But white people are not the only people who participated in that sin. They don't have the monopoly on it. And if we're going to talk about true history and not this whitewashing of history, we actually have to talk about the fact that Black people own Black people as well. The true blackwashing of history comes when we don't want to acknowledge our sinful participation in history. And I just thought I will leave you with that thought. Have a good day.